Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. All praise is due to Allah, and may Allah's peace and blessings be on the last messenger of Allah. The presentation of this afternoon is, as entitled here, the Islamization of education, which should be distinguished from the Islamization of knowledge. These are two different areas. They may overlap, they may be interrelated, but they're two different areas. Islamization of knowledge is a concept which was proposed or promoted by Dr. Ismail Farouqi from the US back in the 70s and the 80s, where he was proposing that the various areas of knowledge, disciplines outside of Islamic knowledge areas, be redeveloped from an Islamic perspective completely, establishing new foundations and expressing all of the various elements of these various disciplines completely from an Islamic perspective. Now, conferences were held in Mecca under the auspices of the Rabita, the World Muslim League, back in the 70s, and many papers were written. In fact, even an encyclopedia of work, an encyclopedic work was done on this Islamization of knowledge, right? Included in it was the concept of Islamization of education, education being, an element. But in reality, after 30 years have passed, we cannot see any fruit from that great effort which was made back in the 70s today. We can't see it as having impacted on the programs that we are running, the schools, etc. It can't be seen. Because it was a philosophy. It was a philosophical approach to knowledge and its dissemination. Whereas the practical approach is what we are going to be looking at this afternoon, where we can actually make a difference, as they say, where the rubber hits the road. Where we actually take off, get right down to the most basic element in terms of education. That is the teacher. That is what is taking place in the classroom itself. And that's why you, as teachers or administrators of Islamic schools, you were invited to participate in this presentation this evening, to share in another approach, which is, as I said, the practical approach to Islamization of education. We leave it at education, meaning that we are not going to try to discover and identify and establish new philosophical roots for the various disciplines that are out there. We will not reinvent the wheel. Yes, in the beginning we were the ones, who laid foundations for the various sciences of the past, etc. And Europe took what we did and built on it and took themselves to where they are. Now, we don't have to go back to the roots again. What they have done, we build on. What is fact is fact. What is not, we put in its place. We look at it from a different perspective. So this is the approach that we'll be taking. That of building on the knowledge base, the acquired knowledge that the West has developed in the various fields that we teach in our schools right now. Right now, we're teaching all of the areas of math, science, geography, whatever, all the various areas we're teaching. It's all what was presented or what has been presented to the world by the West, by Western civilization. And as such, it has its own context in which it was taught. It developed in a context and it was taught from that context. So what happens in the case of most Muslim schools that are conscious, at the beginning of every year when you bring in new textbooks, you have to have a committee that sits and goes over these textbooks and cuts out pages, tears out pages, whites out bad words and bad ideas or whatever. You try to modify the textbook, as much as you can before you put it in the hands of the children. Right? This is the general process. Parents may not like it. They pay their money and they end up with a book that looks like it's been, turned into a scrapbook. It's been cut up on all these different kinds of things. Parents complain, what is this? We've spent all this money and the book, it's like this. But we're forced to do that in our schools if we're going to use textbooks which are coming from the West. So ultimately, if we are to effectively function as Islamic schools, we need to have our own textbooks, which will contain all of the knowledge that the West has to offer, but presented in an Islamic or in a Muslim context. This is the ultimate goal. Taught in that way, and there are other elements that come up and we'll look at all of them quickly. But practically speaking, that's where we need to be. And that remains the biggest hurdle which prevents truly Islamic schools from emerging. Because, as I have seen visiting schools in different parts of the world, talking with students who are graduating students, etc., and finding them to be academically good, but Islamically damaged. Their perspectives are not really Islamic. We're not achieving the goals that we want for our graduating students. We're not able to achieve them. And one of the biggest hurdles is the textbook. Because no matter how much you cut, and you can only cut so much, those textbooks are the product of 100 years of Western indoctrination. Modification of texts in such a way that their cultural bias is put into virtually every sentence in the text. They have woven it in so finely that if you try to take it out, you just have to scrap the whole text. All you can do is remove the more obvious and more offensive statements and things like this. But the text, in spite of all those moving, still has in them the subtle, subliminal messages of Western civilization and its values. Anyway, that is a whole area of research, study, discussion, etc. To the practical elements that we're speaking about, let us move on to the main elements that we'll be looking at in terms of Islamization of education this afternoon. The 3 E's of education, of the educational process: the educator, the teacher; the education, which is the material being taught; and the institution, which provides it; and the educated, that is the student. Those are your 3 elements. If we are able to Islamize these 3 elements, then we have the greater portion of the work done. We can produce a truly Islamic or Islamized educational institution, school. The institution, which is where all of this is supposed to take place, I call it a time bomb. A time bomb waiting to explode. For the Islamic school to be successful, those who have set it up, those who have bought it, etc., should not be from the business class. They are business people who, looking for advantages, finding some niche. What do the people need? Because that's how, as a businessman, entrepreneur, you look to see what is needed by the society. And when you find your niche, then you get in, you produce a product that fills their need, right? To your profit. Your whole goal is profit as an entrepreneur. That type of a school will always be a failure. It may be beautiful in terms of the structure that is actually built, and maybe the teachers are high-class teachers, and it may have all kinds of status and may charge a lot, and they may have academic success to certain degrees, etc. But it will never succeed as a truly Islamic school, because the philosophy of those who established it was wrong. It was purely a business perspective. And as a business, your priority is profit. And since your priority is profit, you will be ready, without any hesitation, to cut corners, to undermine, to cancel, to change, to modify, to accept what initially you might have said you wouldn't accept. It's Islamic school, we're not going to have this, but next thing you know, you find all kinds of things coming in that school. In order to make the profits, then those types of proprietors will be prepared to sacrifice anything, because it is profit by any means necessary. See, that is the philosophy. Whereas the proper approach should be that this institution is a way of ibadah. That this should be the driving force. This individual, yes, he's a businessman, and he wants something which is not a financial loss. If there are profits, it's good. But his main concern is to utilize the wealth which Allah has given him or her in service of the community. So, in doing so, they worship Allah through their business. This is the way we should be as business people, Muslim business people. We should be doing ibadah regardless of the field that we're in. Engineering, medicine, whatever we're in. It should be a form of ibadah. Meaning we're doing it in such a way which would be pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the point. It would be pleasing to Allah. This is the issue of ibadah. Take your work seriously. Anyway, so moving on, in terms of the basic philosophy with regards to those 3 areas of education. The basic philosophy is that the Muslim teacher should be first and foremost a Muslim teacher. a Muslim who happens to be a teacher, and not a teacher who happens to be a Muslim. Similarly, the school itself should not be a business venture. It should be a school which is Muslim first, meaning what is the biggest element of it is it's Islam, not the school. It could have been a university, it could have been any other institution, but it was Muslim first. Similarly, the teachers, who are, the students who are there should come out as Muslim students, Muslims first, Muslims who happen to be students as opposed to students who happen to be Muslims. So if we look at our first element, the educator's qualifications, what are they? Because we said that they should be Muslim first, then it is the standard for all Muslims, all good Muslims. They should have all of these characteristics. Right? They should have knowledge, they should have faith in sincerity, and they should be geared to doing righteous deeds, turning it into reality. That knowledge, that faith and sincerity is proven by the amal salih, the righteous deeds. So if we go and look at the knowledge, of course, that knowledge itself has to be looked at from different perspectives. We have true versus false knowledge, useful versus useless knowledge. We should be able to make that kind of a distinction. And this should pervade all the elements of our school. When we're looking at all of the whole knowledge purpose, knowledge goal, this is a basic. You could say it's philosophical in a sense, or you could say it is, a maxim for the Muslim school, that the knowledge that we're gaining should be correct knowledge, and it should be useful knowledge. Useful knowledge. In the West, the standard maxim is knowledge for the sake of knowledge. Knowledge for the sake of knowledge. It sounds very sort of altruistic and, highfalutin, as they say, but really, knowledge for the sake of knowledge can become a great evil. Can become a great evil. The example that I usually give is America's spending $4 billion to send a spacecraft to Mars, the rover spacecraft, to crawl around on Mars and analyze the dirt on Mars. $4 billion. At the same time, more than 4 million Americans are homeless. That is the numbers they gave back in the 90s. Right? You have 4 million of your citizens more homeless, and you're spending 4 billion to go to Mars to find out about the dirt on Mars. You see, we say this is useless knowledge. And it becomes evil. In that context, it is evil. Because that wealth is the wealth of the country, and it should be used to benefit the people of the country. What are you doing on Mars? Have we run out of space on Earth, so we need to find another space? If we reach that point, okay, that's another story. If we fill the whole Earth, we have no place left to put people, and we have to now go and find some other place. Yeah, we go to need. That's when we need to find out about the dirt on Mars, right? But today, they say, if all of the citizens of the Earth were put together, standing side by side, we could all fit on the Guernsey Islands at the south of England. So there's some little islands there in the channel. One of the biggest of them, of those little islands, we could all stand shoulder to shoulder and just fill that island. All the citizens of the Earth. So what is that saying? Are we running out of space? I think not, right? This is the point. So This we need to inculcate in the children. Knowledge for its benefit. As the Prophet ﷺ had said, خَيْرُ النَّاسِ أَنْفَعُهُمْ لِلنَّاسِ. The best of people are those most beneficial to people, to the people. So it's about the benefit. And he used to seek refuge from knowledge of which is of no benefit. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ilmin la yanfa'. He used to make this dua all the time. Oh Allah, I seek refuge in you from knowledge which is of no benefit. And then prioritizing knowledge. We have knowledge which is fard ayn and fard kifaya. You know, where do we start? Fard ayn knowledge is the revealed knowledge. Fard kifaya knowledge is the acquired knowledge. The revealed knowledge is Quran and Sunnah. That takes precedence over the acquired knowledge, which is the other various fields. I mean, they both may be fard. And the Prophet ﷺ said, you know, seeking knowledge is compulsory for every Muslim. But which knowledge? You know, people tend to generalize it and make it all equal. So as long as you're in there getting that knowledge, then you're doing what the Prophet ﷺ commanded. But no, it's not just getting that knowledge, it's getting the knowledge which is of most importance, then that which is of next importance, and so on and so forth. So we have to prioritize that knowledge. And then the knowledge, for it to be effectively conveyed, because that is the third element, effective knowledge transfer, the educator should be qualified, should be properly qualified to educate. In many Muslim schools around the world, and this may not be the case so much in Malaysia where rules may be stricter, etc., you will find that those who are teaching in the schools may not be educators. They have a bachelor's in science, teach. It's just kids. You know, you got a bachelor's in science. You should be able to teach. But that's not the case. Simply because you have a bachelor's in science doesn't mean you know how to teach. You know, you may have the knowledge, but how to convey that knowledge, it's another story. Yeah, if it's grade 12 students, maybe it's you can get by because they're like adults. But now when you have to teach primary level school students, you put them in a grade 1, grade 3 class, what are they going to do there if they haven't learned how to teach? So the person who is going to be in the school should be properly qualified. They may have all the ikhlas in the world. They're very sincere, practicing Muslim, but unqualified. Means they don't have the necessary tools to do the job properly. And we shouldn't compromise on this. It's not to say we necessarily turn them away. No, tell them, get that knowledge. Get yourself in a course, get a certificate, whatever, in education, in how to teach, etc. Learn, and then come teach with us. We want you. But not at any price. You know. And this is where, again, the corners get cut. We talked about with those schools whose owners are business people, primarily, thinking only from a business perspective. It's much cheaper to get unqualified teachers than qualified teachers. So he will fill the school with unqualified teachers. They are good Muslims, but unqualified. So what is going to be the consequence? The children will suffer. And the school is for them. But they have been forgotten. Profits takes precedence because it's cheaper to get unqualified than to get qualified. So your profits will be more if you get unqualified. But as a teacher, this is amana. This is a responsibility that is placed in your hands. And for you to take your salary, unqualified, doing a job which you are not qualified to do, this is haram. This is deception. This is cheating. Well, the administration knew you didn't have qualifications, so you're not cheating them. But who are you cheating? The children. You're cheating somebody. The second principle we said was that of Iman, correct belief, and of course this is the basic correct beliefs concerning the pillars, 6 pillars of Iman. And connected to it is patience needed by teachers, which is a product of Iman. With correct faith comes patience. It is the natural product of Iman. Because the biggest principle in terms of developing patience is understanding other. That is the biggest principle. And that is the 6th pillar of Iman. We said sincerity, the intention that as an educator, one must see one's role as an educator to be one in which one is serving the community for the sake of Allah, for the pleasure of Allah. So the work of a teacher should be looked at as your form of ibadah. You are blessed. Most people in their work field will have to struggle to make it Islamic. How to make, my job as a carpenter ibadah. It's much more complicated than that of a teacher. A teacher, it is very simple to make that act ibadah. And Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, describing the world as being cursed and everything in it cursed, except for the remembrance of Allah and what helps us to remember Allah. And he said, وَعَالِمًا وَمُتَعَلِّمًا, the teacher and the student. These are the 2 blessed individuals in the world. So we should strive to be either a teacher or a student. As people in general, whatever field we may be in, we should in some way or other be a teacher, meaning whatever knowledge we have, we should impart it to others for their benefit, or we should be learning, or ideally both. Ideally both, that you are both learning and teaching, because whatever you learn, that knowledge becomes beneficial and good for you when you teach it. Practice it yourself, of course, that's number 1, but then after that, teaching it. As the Prophet ﷺ had said, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. Best of you are those who learn the Quran and teach it to others. And with the intention, with ikhlas, then the teaching will be from, the teaching will be from the heart. Teaching will be from the heart. And what goes from the heart reaches the hearts. The students will know. 2 teachers may stand up and give the same delivery, but the one who's teaching from the heart, the students will know it. It will have a much greater impact than those who are just teaching from their intellect, teaching from the mind, the knowledge, right? Sorry. I don't know how to turn this thing off anyway. So, in terms of the righteous deeds, as we talked about the requirements for the teacher, the educator, that the foundation of righteous deeds is, of course, the Quran and the Sunnah. What the Quran and the Sunnah consider to be righteous, this is what is truly righteous. Because otherwise, if we just talk about righteous deeds, your opinion of what is righteous, my opinion might differ. We have different considerations, different agendas, etc. So there has to be a righteousness which is beyond our considerations. And that's where it is righteousness as defined by the Quran and the Sunnah, by Allah and His Messenger. That is the ultimate righteousness. Secondly, in terms of righteous deeds, knowledge and sincerity, a righteous deed which is done without knowledge may not be rewarded. It's still a righteous deed, but without the knowledge, it may not be rewarded, because without the knowledge, you did it incorrectly. It was a righteous deed, but wasn't done properly. And a righteous deed may be done properly, but without sincerity, again, it's still not rewarded. So these two elements need to be there for righteous deeds to be truly righteous deeds in the sight of Allah, which benefits the doer, the teacher. And the teacher, of course, being the guide, guides ultimately by example. What the teacher does will have a greater impact and effect on the students than what the teacher says. Teacher may say many things, but in the end, what the teacher does is what they follow. Just like as parents, our children may hear us say many things, but in the end, they will do what we do. We become the example for them. They learn from our actions more than they learn from our words. So, among the educator's qualities should be a sense of mission, that the teacher should have the educational effort that he or she is making, as a mission in life. They have that clear. They should have also mercy. They should be merciful in how they're treating those who are under them, the children who are going to be learning from them, young people. Without a sense of mercy, harshness can ruin the knowledge which is taught. So this goes back again to example, that man la yarham la yurham. One who is not merciful to others, Allah will not be merciful to them. If we are not merciful to the children, those children will learn from us to be unmerciful. That's what they're going to pass on. Allah won't be merciful with us, and we will carry the sin of having conveyed a false impression of Islam, because we are the representatives of Islam. And again, we must be as teachers just. Just in the sense that we treat the students equally. As human beings, we have favorites. We have favorites in our families, amongst our brothers and sisters, our neighbors, our schoolmates. We have favorites. We're caught up in this thing of favorites. It's natural. We can't get away from it. Ideally, it would be good, theoretically anyway, not to have favorites. Everybody you treat. But that's not how we are. But now, in the classroom, this becomes dangerous. Favorites become an evil. You can keep it in your mind. Maybe you can't help, as the Prophet ﷺ had said, we're not held accountable for what we think. What happens in our heads or in our hearts. As long as we don't speak on it and act on it. So if you have a favorite in your heart, in your mind, fine. But don't show it to the students. Because if you do that, you will be unjust. You will be unjust. And the students will learn from that. You know. So, our focus, even in the classroom, should emphasize this issue of being fair and being just. With the children amongst themselves, with us as teachers, educators, dealing with them. Of course, there should be a care and concern. You know, sometimes you have teachers who are in a classroom, the whole year goes by and the teacher doesn't still know the names of the students. They say, you there, you know, you in the corner, you know. How? It's not right. You know, maybe you got a lot of students and, you know, you're overloaded and everything, but, you know, it has a big impact, you know, on the student. Of course, your favorites you're going to know. Fatima, the other one, you in the corner. You know, all of this is saying volumes. You know, we should know at least the names of the students in the class. Ideally, the parents, the names of the parents. You know who are the parents of these, because you're having these parent-teacher meetings constantly, so you're meeting the parents and they're calling you up, and so you should have them in your mind. Because if you're trying to get them to do something at home, if they feel you know them, you have a personal connect with their kids, then they're going to respond positively to you. But if you don't, you're not even sure who the kid is, that parent that's calling in, and you know you're stumbling and, you know, bumbling, and you're trying to get them to do things, and they can feel you don't know who you're talking about. You know, you don't know their child. You know, so how are you going to get them to do things? So very, very important that the parents feel it, the children feel it. Preparedness, again, effective teachings requires proper preparation. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. You know, this is, again, sometimes teachers who have taught for a long time, they don't want to submit to this. You tell them lesson plan. I've taught this course for the last 25 years. You know, I can teach it blindfolded. You know, I don't need a lesson plan. This is just automatic. But it's not enough. It's not good enough. Because it means that you're just in a rut. That's what has happened. You're in a rut. You just keep teaching the same thing over and over and over again. There's no development, no improvement. So it means what you did in the very beginning is perfect. And it can't be. It can't be. You know, it means you are not a good teacher. So, preparation, regardless of how much experience you may have, preparation in preparing, you will always find some things new. Some new approaches, some new ideas. Other things will come as you prepare each class, each time. And that's the way it should be. There should be a growth process. And again, being the good example, you know, remains a critical principle. As they say, actions speak louder than words. In terms of the education, this is the second of the three E's. The education. Education is defined, I mean, there are many different definitions of education. But this one I found, you know, really says it all. Education is the process by which a society conveys its cultural values to the next generation. People tend to think of education as, okay, we're teaching them math, we're teaching them science, we're teaching them these bits and pieces of information. That's what we're passing on. But that's not really what we're passing on. Yeah, it's there. That's part of it. But the bigger part of it is the cultural values. Those bits and pieces of facts are in a package. That package is the cultural package. And that is what is most important. That the cultural values, so if we have an Islamic school, Our cultural values are Islamic cultural values. That whatever we teach them, most importantly, is that we teach them the cultural values of Islam. That they come out, they graduate with those cultural values firmly rooted in their psyche, in their practice, in their words, in their deeds. You know, that's what, whether they end up being a successful engineer or a successful dentist or, you know, a professor or whatever, carpenter, in the end, what is most important is that they be successful Muslims. And that is why it is now critical that we convey this message, this education, these educational components, we convey them in an Islamic cultural package. That cultural package is fundamentally a moral package. Because what does culture do? Culture defines for us right and wrong. In my culture, you know, doing this is okay. It's fine. It's good. It's respected. In your culture, it might not be. You know, so it's the culture that is telling you right and wrong. It's establishing the moral foundation. And that is the danger of the Western cultural package. That it does not have a standard, a moral standard. In fact, it has removed morality from education. It has removed morality from education. Morality was taught mainly where? From the Bible. So when the country became secular, the West became secular officially, all of the countries became secular, then it meant that values had to be determined by another method, because we just closed the Bible, put it aside. So then where are you going to define or get your basics for defining what is right and wrong? Now it comes to human mind. And how do human minds come to democracy? So you see, this is where democracy becomes a philosophy, which is interwoven into all of the texts that are coming out of the West. They want the children to grow up with this idea of democracy. It is democracy. And it is not just democracy, but it is secular democracy. Because true democracy has to be secular from their perspective. It has to be secular. So that is their package. In the package, what is coming in the package now, which you will have to look out for in the books, especially in the lower grades, etc., and it'll be all the way through, is homosexuality. You know, this is a big part of the package now. So, in Toronto, 2012, they passed Bill 13, which states it is now permissible to teach homosexuality from kindergarten. And of course, the homosexuals had the books ready. They had hundreds of books which are already produced and just waiting, ready, into the libraries. Libraries now are filled. The libraries of the schools filled with books on homosexuality. But, you know, of course, you're wondering, homosexuality, how are they going to be showing all this nastiness? And no. They're teaching these children, they know they're not going to do it that way. The way they do it, the book will be called My Two Dads, or My Two Moms. Susie has a mom and a dad. Janet has two moms. Now Janet's two moms, they are wonderful people. They take her to the park, they take her to the movies, they take her to the beach, they take her here, there. Her life is just an enjoyable life with two moms. That is homosexuality. Taught right there. That's the foundations of it. Because you're putting in the mind of the child that it is acceptable. In fact, it is desirable. Because when they compare Janet's two moms to Susie's mom and dad, Susie's mom and dad don't do as much as Janet's two moms do. So they're not even just saying it's okay, they're saying it may even be better. You know. So that is the cultural package. And that is what will be in all of the books coming. You see, even the cartoons for the kids. You know? Even the cartoons. You think cartoons might be innocent. You start looking at the cartoons now. Maybe years ago they were innocent of these things. They were filled with violence and all kinds of other things. But now, not only are they filled with that, they're also filled with subtle brainwashing of the children to homosexuality and other standards that are becoming popular. So this is what we as educators have to be conscious of, that the message, the essential message of Islam is a moral message. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِيُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I was only sent to perfect for you the highest of moral character traits. So that's the essential message of Islam. This is what Islam has to offer the world. We don't have technology anymore. There was a time when Muslims had technology to offer. We were the top scientists in Spain and in Baghdad and in Damascus and all this. We were the top. So we were giving them with the science. They came and they learned from us. Well, they've taken over. All the science, we go to them to learn. So they have all that acquired knowledge. But the revealed knowledge, which teaches the true moral principles for human society, will only be found in the Quran. A lot of it was there in the Bible, but it became distorted. Because when you deal with morality, morality is in three spheres. Morality with regards to God, with regards to our fellow human beings, and with regards to the world in which we live. Now, in regards to God, the Bible, the New Testament, was changed in such a way that it became acceptable to worship other than God. Through the words of Paul, his writings, included now in the Bible, it became justifiable to worship Jesus as God, to believe that he was God, that God became a man. So that is immorality on the highest level with regards to God. And that is the most important area. That's the area that if you die in that state without having repented from God, you have lost everything. That is most serious. So it is only in Islam, in the Quran and the Sunnah, that the correct morality with regards to God has been preserved. Worship God alone. God is not his creation. The message is clear. Only in Islam. Of course, the message with regards to other human beings, morality with regards to other human beings, you shouldn't kill, steal, all these different types of things. You'll find that in the Bible, Old Testament. It's there. Even the worship of one God is there too. But that is the Old Testament. So Christians don't feel themselves bound by the texts of the Old Testament, because they have the New Testament, which is Paul's testament. And in that, the Tawheed was undermined, distorted, and changed. So in the areas of relationship with parents, husband and wife, marriage, against homosexuality and all that's there in the Old Testament. You'll find that there. It's preserved in the book. But because the book is got some of this and some of that, then it is not a reliable text anymore. So it's only in the Quran, only in Islam, that the true cultural values, which are respected and approved by God are preserved. So in terms of the education, it in and of itself has three aspects to it: the material which is taught, the teaching environment, and the teaching methodology. Our focus will be on the first, the material which is taught. Teaching environment, this goes back to the school and things connected with the school. Teaching methodologies, that goes back to knowledge of child education, early childhood education, etc., etc., knowledge of. So we'll run through that briefly, but our main focus will be on A, which is the material taught. So the material which is to be taught should be Islamized. This is what we said was our goal in the very beginning: to Islamize the curriculum. And the most basic place where that will take place will be in the Islamization of the lesson plans themselves. Because this is your day-to-day guide. This is your day-to-day guide. If Islamization takes place here, then in spite of whatever else is in the school, a huge step is taken towards Islamization in the school as a whole. But of course, this has to be shared by all the teachers. Because what happens is that people tend to think of Islamization, we Islamize our school, we've got an Islamic school. Why? Because we have Arabic, Islamic studies, and Quran. There we've done it. But that approach is actually a Christian approach. That approach is a Christian approach. Why do I say it's Christian? Because it follows the Christian principle in which the church was separate from the state. You had two rulers. The Pope, he was the spiritual ruler of the Holy Roman Empire. That's what it was called, the Holy Roman Empire. And Caesar, who was the ruler of the temporal empire. So they had this statement which they attribute to Jesus: leave unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's. So this is what we have done when we consider Islamization of our school to be merely adding Islamic studies, Arabic, and Quran. We have followed that same way of thinking. It is the way the missionary schools were. You had Bible class, and then you have your other subjects. Right? That's how it was taught. You had Bible class and your other subjects. So that's what we've done. We've got Quran class, and we have our other subjects. So the same dichotomy is there, where we're producing, bipolar students who will have two personalities. They have an Islamic personality when they're in Islamic gatherings, and then they got another personality when they're with their friends and the other circumstances. So you have this, two-way approach, when in fact, of course, Islamically, it's only one. So the true way forward is to Islamize every single subject taught in the school. There should not be any subject which is not Islamized, taught in an Islamic package. So, I have identified basically 5 principles or 5 elements which would, or by which the lesson plans could be Islamized. The first is that of the Islamic terminology. Islamic terminology, we will begin with Bismillah in the classroom. It's a science class. Geography, we still begin with Bismillah. It's not compulsory. The hadith which says whatever is not begun with Bismillah is crippled is not authentic. Not authentic. But still, beginning with Bismillah is acceptable. It's a good thing. We do it when we're going to eat. We do it, in other circumstances. So, beginning with Bismillah is a good principle in the classroom to establish terms used on a regular basis which the children should understand. Because when you first go into a classroom, and of course you will teach them Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and you respond to wa alaikum salam. The greeting, Islamic greeting should be there. They should understand what that Islamic greeting means, and they should know what Bismillah means. So it's not just the words. Of course, there are ages where you may not be able to explain. They just have to learn the words, right? It's a good thing. It's remembering Allah. That's as much as you can. You can't go too much deeper than that. But when they get a little older, they're able to grasp some concepts. You're already in grade 1, whatever. They should know what Bismillah means. They should know what the greetings, the Salam Alaikum. Why Salam Alaikum is better than hi. How you doing? Why? Because the society around is going to be will be promoting hello and hi and all these other things. So why is it better to say Assalamu Alaikum? They should. This is part of their education. That what we want them to know and what we want them to understand is that Islam is not just blind rituals. Where later on in life they will be asked, why do you do that? And they say, I don't know. My parents did. Muslims do it. It's a Muslim thing. But you don't know why. That's what we don't want. We want Muslims to be conscious. You know why you're doing and you know what you're doing. Are you having a hard time reading this? Huh?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't read it. Like when it was darker, I don't even know, because of the lighting. Yeah, I think even, but even in the dark, I think it's just, I had another copy of this where it was reversed, but unfortunately. Anyway, just try to carry on. The main headings are there anyway. So, as I said, the various etiquettes, should be learned. When you sneeze, you say Alhamdulillah, not Gesundheit. Alhamdulillah. And when they say Alhamdulillah, you respond, Yarhamukallah. And there is a counter response, Yahdikumullah wa yuslih ba'alakum. Okay, you give them that. And what it means. So we understand these are du'as. We're making prayers. We're asking Allah to bless our brothers and sisters. The second principle is that of developing the historical relevance. There is a book called 1001 Muslim Inventions. It was produced in the UK around 2008 or 9. They had a special conference or Maharajan, what they call these things now, like, the word slips me in English, but you know, an event in which this idea of Muslims' contribution to the knowledge of the world, because it's so hidden in the textbooks. Some Muslim individuals in the UK put together this major presentation. They made a movie and they made a book from it. It's good if you can get the movie. The book is a must. It should be in the library, in the teacher's library, in the general library. It should be easily accessible to the children. Probably a children's version needs to be made, because they were not thinking schools. They were just thinking world, general. But we as educators know that there should be, you cannot put that book down for the kids in grade 1, 2, 3, 4, no. But there should be a grade 1 to 3 version, a grade 4 to 6 version, and then the big one can do for the kids grade 7 up. You know, this is a project that some of you might want to think about, how to make a children's version of that text. But anyway, 1,001 inventions. Basically, what they've done is they've shown what Muslims have contributed in all of the various areas of learning. Virtually every field that you can enter, some Muslim has done something somewhere. And something not just done like everybody else, but something unique. They have invented, they have produced, they did what others before had never done. So they have a place in history. So this is now your resource work, and you can find others too. Your resource work, which will help you in the class, to Islamize your class. That whatever class you're teaching on, before you go into your subject, or whilst you're teaching your subject, you will mention, has anybody heard about Idrisi? We're doing geography. Idrisi? Anybody heard about Idrisi? No, nobody in that class heard about Idrisi. So now you tell them about Idrisi. Yeah, you know. Okay. So, I didn't mean literally here, I was just talking in general. Huh? So, you know, Idrisi, he, even though unfortunately we still even have some Muslim scholars who still believe that the earth is not round. Yeah, unfortunately we still have them, you know. Idrisi, way back in the 14th century, you know, provided the scientific proof that the earth had to be round. It couldn't be flat. His whole argument was concerning the ship as it comes into port. When the ship is at a distance, it's just coming to the horizon, you will see the mast first. Then more of the mast, then more of the mast, then the body of the ship, then the bow, and it comes in. Now if the world was flat, then this wouldn't happen. That only happens because it is round. So the proof was there. He was a geographer. You know, he provided a philosophy for geography, but based on scientific facts. So you're teaching your class in geography, let them know about Idrisi. You know, that name should be known. Maybe they know Columbus, they know Vasco da Gama, they know all these other names that they're fed with. They don't know Idrisi. You know, this is our mistake. They should know him. And other, you know, who contributed. So in every field, you try to bring a figure. You know, these are the heroes of Islam. So they have some names, big names, that are just there, stand out. That everybody knows Einstein, everybody knows Newton, everybody knows. But so many people from the Muslim side who they have never heard. Completely unknown. And it shouldn't be that way. So this is one of the elements that we can use to Islamize our class. That in each class they're being introduced to great contributors to human civilization of the past. So this gives them a historical understanding of themselves. They do have a place in history. It's not just Muslims popped up at this point in time. Here we are. All the great things which were done in the past, it was all done by European civilization, Europeans and so on and so. And here we are, we just learning from them. No. We were before them. We did things before them. We did things whilst they were doing them. And we've done things after them. Some things, say, for example, you're dealing with chemistry and so on and so on. So, who knows that the rocket fuel that was designed to drive the rockets, the American first landing on the moon, was invented by an Egyptian scientist. Who knows that? What is his name? I don't even know. Okay, but the point is that when there's a point in physics and that you're going to deal with rocketry, combustion, and you're going to deal with these things. So you tell them that something. This is now. This is not the past. This is in recent times, right? He may not be in the 101, 1001 because it's dealing mainly with the past. But there are many also who have contributed in modern times too. So we let the students understand that it's not just in the past also. We've contributed. Right now, there are Muslims playing huge roles. The top heart surgeon in the UK was a Muslim. Right? So these type of information, these different pieces of information, this is the historical relevance so they feel that Muslims and Islam has a relevance. The third point is the Quranic reference. Whatever subject we're talking about, there is a verse in the Quran that is related to it. Somehow, some way. So you, teaching your class, you find a verse or two. And you bring it in at the appropriate point in the class. In the course of your discussion, as you're explaining or whatever, there's a point, then you say, and Allah said. Point number 4, and the Prophet said. Same way, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there are from the hadiths things which will be relevant to virtually every single class that you teach. How to find them? Now we have Sheikh Google. If you can't find it still, you can ask the Islamic department, the scholar who is there with the school, to find the hadith or the verse for us. But they have a concordance of the Quran where all the words are there. You can look from that perspective. They have an English version. Or, as I said, with Google now, it's even faster than most of the things that Muslims have produced. Google seems to outdo them. The point is that they have it all there. Of course, if you have Arabic, it's a lot faster, it's a lot easier. Only English, you may have to stumble around for a while before you get what you need. But in Arabic, it is much more precise, jumps into it, because the Arabic side is, mostly for Muslims. Muslims have produced the works and things that they're using. So this is something important that as teachers, though you're not required, Arabic, you don't have to have Arabic that you can converse and speak and wherever you go, but at least you have a working knowledge of Arabic. Because for our Quran and Hadith to be fundamentally in Arabic, we should have a working knowledge of Arabic that we can research, we can find, right? So what we're doing here is really mimicking the works of the scholars of the past. Because if you pick up any of the classical works, like the work which was done on the reflection of light, where the scholar, I think his name is Al-Haythami, he was talking about how light goes through the prism and it splits into the different colors and this and the other. And in the middle of his manuscript, you see me saying this, and then he says, and Allah said so and so and so. And he goes on talking further, and in the eye there is similar, and he says, and the Prophet ﷺ said so and so and so and so. And he went on. So these things are introduced subtly. Meaning that we're not going to, in the beginning of the class, list all of these things. And then we go on with the class. Because then again we have the separation. We want them to feel that this is a natural fit. This Quran, this Hadith, it's just natural, it's part. Because what we're teaching is somehow all under Islam. Because it's ultimately from Allah. That's the whole concept, isn't it? That the knowledge, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءُ كُلَّهَا, that was the foundation. Allah taught Adam the knowledge of everything. Foundational knowledge, the names, how to name, to label, etc., etc., everything. It's there already. So that's what we want to bring in. The fifth principle, perhaps the most important principle, is the moral message that we introduce in every class. A moral message. A moral message which is age appropriate. Because there's some issues of morality which little kids don't have. 6 years old, 7 years old, different from the issues that the 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds have. So, child psychologists, this is where important to have a child psychologist in our schools, will be able to identify for us what are the moral issues of kids 5 and under, of kids 10 and under, of kids 15 and under. Each level has major moral issues, and we should know them, and we try to weave them into every class. It could be something which the school does as a whole, that this month or this week this is the moral message, all the teachers put it in your classes. Or it's left up to the individual teachers. Each individual teacher chooses the appropriate moral message and weaves it into his or her class. And it's woven in, as I said, subtly. You don't stop the class and say, now kids, today's moral message is ta 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 ta. No, not like that. Because again, you separated it out. It becomes something separate from the class. But no, you have the moral message you want to try to give. In the behavior of the children, you can take it out. As the kids are in the class, you'll see, elements of immorality every day. It will be there. So it's just for you to stop the child who's doing it and explain to the class, this is not good. Why this is not good, so and so and so and so and so. So if you think for a moment that in your school, from kindergarten to grade 12, every class a moral message is given, what type of graduating student are you going to have? It will be a graduating student that you haven't seen before. And that's what we should have. That's what we're supposed to have. So that this element of morality, that student who graduates is so firm in his or her morals then there is no way you can bribe this individual. What are we suffering from? The third world. What are we suffering from? Corruption. Corruption. Bribery, people taking money under the table, kickbacks, all the different things that are going on. Why? The moral fiber has been destroyed. And it is not being revitalized in the society. Yes, we've moved ahead technologically, but still our textbooks are coming from the West, etc. So this moral element has been taken out. It is not taught in Western texts. It's not taught. Romeo and Juliet is adultery, fornication, and suicide. All that is forbidden in Islam. That's what it is. And that is the classic, which every child must study. What is it saying? What is it telling us? You see? So we have to make this change. And personally, in traveling from Gambia in West Africa, the farthest point west, all the way to Manila in the Philippines, visiting Islamic schools, asking the same question to the grade 11 and grade 12 students about to graduate. Who among you can raise his hand or her hand and swear by Allah that they have never cheated on a single examination? And you know what? I couldn't find a single school with a single student to raise his or her hand. And I was only going to Islamic schools. I'm not going to the regular schools now. I'm going to the Islamic schools. Not a single student in a single school. What is that saying? They're doing well academically. They're in the top 10. The schools are right up there. The society, they're writing them up, in the newspapers, such and such a school. Wonderful. Academic results. But the teachers, when I asked this question, invariably they were embarrassed. The teachers with me, the principal of the school, vice principal, they're waiting to see if nobody can raise their hand. I even met one of the education ministers here, right? I sat with the Minister of Education, and I was just telling him this problem, right? And he raised his hand. He said, "I could raise my hand." Oh no! I remember I did cheat. Just sorry. Put his hand down. This is reality. This is reality, and this shouldn't be. What is Al-Amin? This is the title of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Al-Amin, the trustworthy, the truthful. But this is lost. Our students should all graduate Amin. So this is the huge, you could say, game changer. If we are able to establish this, then we have a means now of changing the future within the qadr of Allah for the ummah. Without bringing that moral element back in, we'll produce academics who will do well, they make a lot of money and whatever, but it's not going to change the society. The society will remain as it is. In the West, in fact, they cheat less. They're cheating also. It's cheating all across, everywhere. Universities, people they become specialists in cheating, wireless and, they're using everything. As soon as technology comes, they're developing other ways to cheat. Yeah, they're doing it. But you have enough of them who don't cheat. They have that. Much more than we have it. And that's a shame. Because this was the area that we were supposed to be ahead of them in morality. But at least in this area, we're not. Sad enough to say. And personally, when I sat in the very first examination in Medina University, Islamic University of Medina. My very first examination that I sat in. This is for the first year. And they put us in the first year with students from the fourth year. You know, every other student is one from the first year, so that we're all split up. That first examination. And the first examination was the examination on what? Quran. Quran. How were we examined? We were given a paper. You had 5 questions. Each question, they had the first verse, and then 10 verses later, the 10th verse. You had to write in what was in between. Right? We had 2.5 juz to memorize, each and every one of us. For every year, we had 2.5 juz to memorize. So that's what we had to do. Sit down, see it, do it. To my surprise, the student who was sitting in front of me from the 4th year, getting ready to graduate, is trying to talk to the student behind me to find the answer. I said, A'udhu Billah. Please, don't. The guy's telling me, mind your own business, you know, this is our business, you know. The guy next to me, he's got a little Quran. Little, tiny, one of those little tiny ones. Got a little Quran down here. He's looking and he's writing. A'udhu Billah. I call the teacher. Ustad. You know, the teacher was the invigilator. Ustad, please see this man here. Of course he's hiding it, and teacher comes and says, what? There's nothing. This is Quran. These were students from all over the Muslim world. So what kind of ustad is coming out of there, you know? Sheikh. He cheated in his Quran. But this is endemic. I mean, it is across the board. Even I remember my Mantiq class in Mantiq, which is logic. Logic is very, very difficult in Arabic, particularly difficult. The Mantiq teacher told us at the end of the, as we were preparing for the exams, you know, usually what they do, they give you a list of questions and you try to find the answers, and he gives the answers in class and so on. So it's like preparing you for the exam. At the end of going through all of that, you know, he tells us, you know, okay, you know, when the exam comes, if your good friend asks you for help, help him. Did I hear that right? What did he mean by that? He said, you know, because when you're studying, you know, you study so hard at night and so on, so you come into the exam, so you get a mental block and it just won't come. But you have it in your head somewhere, you know. So help him. I said, yeah, Ustad. What do you mean by help him? I said, help him. But help how? Give him the answer. A'udhu Billah. This is the Ustad himself. Professor telling the students to cheat. Yeah. So, you see, this thing is huge. It's a huge problem. How do we correct this? Where the rubber hits the road. Allah doesn't ask you to deal with that ustad, or the corruption that exists in the whole country, etc. You can play your role by making sure that every one of the children who pass through your hands have gotten the moral message of Islam. And if enough schools take this on, then inshallah a generation will come which will change the situation. But without that, without this happening, then we cannot make the change. And Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what is within themselves. So how do they change? This is where the role of the teacher becomes so critical. Because it is the teacher who can make that difference. So, these are the 5 principles. Of course, the question will rise. Usually mathematics teachers, whenever I give this presentation, is, okay, sir, how do you Islamize 2 plus 2 equals 4? Show us, please. You know. The principles are here. You start with your Bismillah, you tell them if one prays 2 rak'at, sunnah of Fajr, and 2 rak'at of fard of Fajr, how many rak'at have you made? 4. You just Islamized 2 plus 2 equals 4. It's not as hard. People think, Islamization, this is so much effort. And no. If you know your deen, you can always find examples. There are always no end of examples that can be brought to illustrate. Furthermore, you want to put in that moral message, you tell the story, because teaching mathematics for kids is done in word stories, word problems. So you say Ali has 2 riyals and loses 1 in the playground, so his mother Sarah gives him another. Later that day, a classmate Khalid finds the missing riyal and he also returns it to Ali. What is the total number of riyals that Ali has now? 4. Where's the moral message? Huh? Khalid finding the missing riyals, returns it. Right? This is the moral message. Because kids at that age, they follow the principle, finders keepers, losers weepers. You know? That's the norm, right? You found it, it's yours. That's it, you know? Don't tell me it belongs to somebody else. I found it, right? So, you've taught. Of course, there's also another moral message in there, is that, when Ali loses the 2 riyals, when I tell this story also, we tell it with the parents in mind, that the mother, Sarah, she gives him another. She doesn't scream at him, you stupid, you this, and slap him and whatever, you lost the 2 riyals. No, gives him more. Merciful. So there's so much you can put into these stories. Of course, when you read the works, the books that are coming to you with their word problems, you see it's a whole nother world altogether. They've got fairy tales, they got, people playing tricks on each other, and it's a big laugh, and it's no morality, no moral message. Now, some places, you have issues, right? Where, for example, this is English class. How do you Islamize your lesson plan for English here? You have to tell the story of the lion and the mouse. That is Aesop's fables, right? The lion and the mouse. So, you're dealing with something which is falsehood. It's a fairy tale. So you have to teach the kids, animals don't talk to each other. Right? In the story, of course, they have no talking. Right? And that, at the same time, you give them this, on one hand, you cancel the negative misinformation, and on the other time, you give them the positive Islamic information that Prophet Sulaiman, he understood the language of the ants. So this is a miracle given to Prophet Sulaiman. So they can appreciate this is something special. It's not, nobody else can say they understand what the ants are talking about. No. Right? And then, of course, you focus on in that story, of course, the mercy element in the story, which is there between the lion and the mouse. You know, there is an element there. You can take out that. If there is element in the story which itself, which you can show, you know, a issue of moral excellence, you show it. And then you also bring out the principle in the story of Prophet Sulaiman, and you focus on the overall message, which is that of not looking down on others. And you can bring in Surah Hujurat, that is the, you know, La yaskhar qawmun min qawm, right? Don't scorn or look down upon others. So that's your element. Your Quran is in there. You can bring the Hadith also, that brings it also. So this is just a quick example of how classes may be Islamized. In a more advanced Form 6, in design and technology, we have the origin of metals. You can use Surah Al-Hadid, which talks about the extraterrestrial origin of iron. This is a scientific miracle in the Quran. And then you can focus on the use of metals, you know, as a metaphor in the Quran. The Quran talks about, you know, the extraction of the pure metal from the gross material, etc. In biology, this is girls around 14 years old, class. Structure of male and female reproductive apparatus. This is something that has to be taught there. You know, understanding the basic differences between male and female humans. Of course, in here, I mean, this is where you can talk about, you know, Allah creating males and females, that they are fundamentally different. وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. The male is not like the female. They're different. And you bring that home to them. And that's why in Islam, men don't wear women's clothes, women don't wear men's clothes. You know, you give them the examples that are relevant to them, help them to understand that this clear distinction between male and female, because the society is promoting a blurred vision, you know. So bisexuals and what they call these cross-dressers and all these type of things, this becomes like norm. It's okay. You know, so-and-so in the movies, he's dressing like a woman and he's talking like a woman, and, you know, all of these ideas are being promoted, you know. So to young people, don't feel shy, you can wear. I mean, even some schools, they'll have the kids wear, you know, boys will wear girls' clothes and girls will wear boys' clothes. They come to school for a day, you know. They have their own agenda. We have our agenda too, which is to make this distinction clear. And in that, you can talk about also the, you know, the scientific things from the Quran, where Allah talks about the development of the embryo and male and female and issues like this related to the Quran. So, I mean, these are some examples of lesson plans. Okay, I'm gonna stop here. This is the end of the part 1. So we'll maybe just stop for a minute. If you have any questions before we go on to the second part, if you have any questions you'd like to ask. No? Okay, it's all right. I mean, inshallah, we don't need to ask questions just for the sake of asking questions. Inshallah, it means everything said was understood, and inshallah, we'll move on to the next section, which should be Part 2. Okay, so remember we said in the beginning that the goal ultimately for the Islamic school would be to develop their own textbooks, alternative texts. Of course, different countries have curriculums which have been set by the government, etc. You have to comply with their fixed requirements. Could be. Some are more flexible than others. What you do is you have your own text and you have their text. So both are there present. So at least what is found in the government text, you make sure that you have covered everything. The Islamic text should cover it, and then some. Right? That there's nothing missing, so the student has both texts until such time as you are permitted to have your own text and not have to deal with the government text. So how do we create our own texts? I have outlined here, in what you can't see, a basic step-by-step approach to creating our own texts. Now, if the school or the schools that you all represent accept this vision and this mission, over the next year to Islamize the curriculum in this fashion, what we would do is that at the end of this next year coming, the lesson plans of the year would be gathered. In the given school.
Would you want to change the color of the slides so that it's easier for everyone to see?
Yeah, you can, but I mean, the time is going to take now, I think.
It takes 2 seconds. I'll make
You can do it in 2 seconds? Okay, please. Go ahead. What you would do, as I said, in the course of this year, you gather. Thank you. In the course of this year, you gather the lesson plans. You sit together, all the teachers who are grade 1 teachers, for example. You have your lesson plans for maths, you have your lesson plans for science, whatever. So you sit together and you compare. You have more than one. If you only have, assuming in your school you have more than one grade 1 teacher, you have more than one grade 1. So those teachers would get together and then compare their lesson plans. The one who has, you see the example which you used, maybe was better than the one I used. Okay, that's a good one. Let's keep that one. Or in this one, okay, this was better. This one was better. And you sift through and choose the best effort, right? The best on all the different levels of the Islamization, the 5 points that I spoke of, right? So at the end of your session or sessions, you then work out a master lesson plan, right? Which is composed of the best from all of the lesson plans of the teachers. If it is possible that the schools cooperate, then the best plan from each of the school is brought, and the teachers of that level get together and they choose the master plan, right? The best of all the best of the best lesson plans. Then this one now is taught in the second year. You're implementing it, working out whatever kinks there are. At the end of the year, you look it over again. Now everybody's using one lesson plan. You're looking to see which way this can be improved, that could be improved here, there. At the end, again, you look at the improvements that everybody has gathered, get them all together, all the schools together, whatever, and then you clean that up. You come out now with your ultimate lesson plan. And this is a good thing in general for schools, because teachers may disappear in the middle somewhere. And if you're depending on that, the individual initiative of a teacher, that teacher is very good. She's gone, another teacher you hire hasn't got a clue. Your whole effort is undermined. So where you have a lesson plan, the new teacher comes in, you say, that's what you have to teach. They have something to work with. You know, it's made it very simple, right? So by the end of the second year, you can now approach the publisher to create the text, which is for that lesson plan. From the lesson plan, now you create your text. You create your text from the best of the texts that are out there. Again, you're not going to start from zero. You don't need to start from zero. You know, McGraw-Hill, you know, various publishers, they've put out. So you just take what they've done. Take the best that they have from here and there, whether it's in the form of illustration, or it is the wording that they use, or it is the layout, or whatever. You take the best, modifying it according to your master lesson plan, and they're ready. By the third year, you could print. Actually, you could do it from the end of the first year. You could start that process going, you know. So by the time you finish off with your second year, your second time around, then the books will be ready for the third year. Right? This other way, you're going to start the work in the third year. Means that you may not finish it for another year or two to come if you're trying to do all the grades. So this would be the process by which you can develop your alternative texts. Now, I have created an alternative text from back in the 90s. Some of you may have seen it, and many of you may have not. It is called the E-Man English Reading Series. I tackled English because this was just a subject. It could have been science, it could have been anything else. But I chose English. There was already a standard called the GIN readers. This is the standard which I took in the school which I taught back in the 90s, late 80s. That school used the GIN readers for their English curriculum. The reading texts. It's not for teaching English in terms of the mechanics of English, but after you've learned the mechanics, then you have to have text that you read where it is implemented. So that series called the GIN readers or GIN readers, I used that as the benchmark and developed an Islamic version, Iman reading series, in which the students would practice their English, but in an Islamic package with all of the things that we spoke about in it. Right? So, of course, this is something of what we may call the cart before the horse. Basically, what I told you was to work the other way. I didn't have access to schools to do this. I mean, although I was talking about this, I did this to show those people who were working on textbooks for Islamic schools, who were focused only on Islamic studies, that we needed to go beyond. You know, people were trying to develop new Islamic studies series, and you know, we have no end of them that have been done. we need to get into science and to get into all of these other areas. So I produced this series called the Iman Reading Series. So this is one of the books. This book is from, it's level 3, book 4. Now level 3, book 4 is for age 7 plus, right? So in this book, I don't know why this other one here is so small, why that happened. This was supposed to be the same size, right? That's the first page of the story. Now this book actually had a number of stories, but one of the stories was about going to the beach, trips to me, remember? And that image from that ended up as the cover image, right? So this story talks about these two kids going to the beach, and they're playing with a frisbee, and they were building sandcastles, and somebody else was playing with a frisbee and a dog, right? So person throws the dog, the frisbee, the dog runs, knocks over their castle, and messes it up. Natural reaction, throw stones at the dog, right? So, because of what the dog did. But in the story, the mother tells them, don't do that. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't throw stones at the dog, and goes on to explain, about as Muslims, what we do, what in terms of our behavior, and so and so, and the food we eat, and so on, so and so. And at the end of it, right, then after she has explained everything, the leftover food they give to the dog. Okay, those are the quick elements of the story there. But what's happening here is that a number of issues are being clarified. This is morality now to the world in which we live. The dog is a part of that world. In most Muslim countries, dogs are hated, right? And even the attitude that Muslims deal with dogs, how they treat dogs, for the non-Muslims, sometimes they find it very funny, because if they come walking with their dog, all Muslims that are in that area will scatter, run, run from the dogs, right? So this attitude that Muslims have developed with regards to the dog actually is not from Islam. It's from ignorance. Either it's from ignorance from a fiqh perspective, where people think that if the dog touches you, your wudu is gone, which is not, because the Sharia did not make the touching of the dog breaking of wudu. There's no connection between the two. The other point is that in spite of the fact that we may feel whatever, we don't want the dog around us, it doesn't mean that we can mistreat them. It's right or acceptable for us to mistreat them. So this issue is also brought. And it's a chance also even for the teacher who's teaching, to go into, to elaborate even further and let the students understand that, for us in Islam, it is okay to have a dog. A dog as a guard dog, to guard your place. A hunting dog, when you go hunting with, this is mentioned in the Quran, hunting dog. You can make the verse from the Quran, And the whole issues that people have, the dog, saliva, it touches you, break wudu and all this, the saliva of the dog. When the hunting dog, when you shoot the bird and it falls, the hunting dog runs and grabs the dog and brings it back. How he brings it back? In his paws? He comes running back on his back feet with his, holding the bird in his 2 front feet? No, he's bringing it back in his mouth. He's bringing the bird back in his mouth. Saliva. What do? Do we have to wash that bird now 7 times, one of the times with earth? No, we cook the bird and we eat it. Simple. You see, but we have gone to extremes with this regard, in this regard. So all of these things, the people can be enlightened. You can use this story. Even some of the teachers of Islamic studies in some of the schools were using my textbooks, these books for teaching Islam. Because the books that were made for the Islamic studies in the past, back in the 90s, that they were just all writing, not attractive to the children, whereas this has images, pictures, it's attractive, colors, and this type of thing. So this was an example, practical example. This series was developed up to grade 3. I stopped at grade 3, but it had a total of 56 books completing the series from pre-kindergarten to grade 3. Inshallah, we're looking to reprint the book. Also now, it had stopped printing when I shifted from the Emirates to Qatar. So we're looking to revive it. It has been given to schools all around the world. Some schools here were using them in Malaysia, but it's been some time, and many more schools have come up, and the need for such textbooks is great. This is the need of the hour. We need this in science, we need it in physics, we need it in mathematics, we need it in all of the subjects, things like this. Then, as I said, the remainder, the educational component, we have the teaching environment, you could call it the atmosphere of the school. It should have an Islamic atmosphere to it. What's on the walls, and posters or bulletin boards, etc. There should be reminders one way or another of Allah and these type of things there, as related to the various subjects. Then, of course, the way in which the students are dressed. We should have proper Islamic dressing codes. And even, for example, though we're dealing with little children in grades 1, 2, 3, it is better that the dress codes, what is acceptable Islamically, is established from there. This is better. That they grow up with being comfortable dressing Islamically. So the children, the girls, shouldn't come to school wearing spandex tights, regardless. So it's only 7 years old. Yes, it's not wajib. Issues of aura is not stressed. But if the child grows up with a loose view, where they feel comfortable exposing their body parts, when they reach 14, puberty kicks in, and you want them to cover up, now you have a battle on your hands. So it is better from the earliest grades, that they get used to dressing in loose clothing that covers the aura. And I'm not saying the little kids, grade 7, they have to wear abaya and the whole, no, but at least, loose clothing which covers their bodies. Right? So that is part of the environment of the school. Everybody in the school should comply with the dress code. Even the cleaner who is cleaning the floors and that, they should comply. We don't make any exceptions. If you have a non-Muslim who's working in the school with you, let them comply with it. And they leave the school, they want to take it off, whatever, that's their business. But in the school, we have a standard dress code for everybody, from the top to the bottom. And teaching methodology, of course, this is dealing with the educational component, where Quran and Sunnah should be a source of guidance for us, the different methods used, whether it's Q&A, repetition, demonstration, analogy, all these different modes that are used in the Quran to teach. We find it also in the Sunnah, they're all there. We should have, this type of variation in our teaching methods, that we don't just have a one track, we just teach one way. We have the text and we just teach, boom, boom. Boring. We should be using all of the different methods which cater to the various ways by which the students learn. Whether it's in groups, singly, hearing, seeing, touching, feeling, all these different things, right? So we should make use of all the learning tools. These are just final points. Aim of Islamic education. What is the ultimate aim? It is to produce a student conscious of the need to worship Allah. Number one, Tawheed. Conscious of the goal in life, paradise. They're clear what the goal is. It's not confused what their goal in life is. Most kids, you ask them, what's your goal in life? To become a doctor. That's it. They can't think beyond that. They're stuck there, It should be clear. Motivated to implement the divine commandments. You don't have to be beating on their door, getting them up to pray. They know to get up to pray. Capable of fulfilling his or her social responsibilities in a morally sound way. They're going to enter into society, working in different fields. They should be able to fulfill those requirements with a moral consciousness. They cannot be bribed. That is ultimately is the best citizen. That's what we want to produce, the ideal citizen, a Malaysian citizen of Malaysia. One who is morally solid. It is unthinkable for you to offer him or her a bribe. And in terms of the students, as I said, because of the fact that we're focusing on the moral element, then the grades of the students shouldn't be the priority. Grades is important, we do work towards them, but the moral grades should be most important. At the end of the year, when you have your school convocation, graduation, whatever, and you're giving the prize for the top student, it's not the one with the top marks. It's the one with the top morality. If you don't implement that in the school, if all the thing that you do in the school is just about academics, you got the top marks, you got the prize, you got the cup or whatever, then you're telling them, this is your message, this is your example, that morality is not important. Because once it's all about those grades and getting that cup, getting that position or whatever, then what kicks in? Machiavelli, by any means necessary. So you don't have any qualms about cheating to make sure you get the top mark so you can get the cup. See, once it's put that way, then you're feeding into that immorality which is common in society, and people do it without even being told that Machiavelli in the story of the prince, laid out that principle. No, it is already known. People were doing it before, by any means necessary. So we have to turn that around and let the students understand the importance of moral excellence. So naturally we're trying to create a student who is multidimensional. They're not caught in one physical goal of material success. That's it. That's what modern education makes them unidimensional. They just have one dimension, and that is money. Fame. But money more than fame, because what comes with fame is money. So you want the fame so you can get the money. So that's everything goes back down to money. So they should have that mission, purpose in life clear, and the obligation to the community. That's why it's good to institute in the school community service. Community service where the students are required to go and do some community service on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. They should go out to develop that sense of responsibility, to try to do something for the community. You know, they've tried to introduce that into the West. I know in some schools in Canada, many schools in Canada, they've reintroduced that. To graduate from grade 12, you have to put in so many community service hours to graduate. And I thought it was a good idea, so I included it also in my university, Islamic Online University, that all students studying in the various bachelor programs have to put in 36 hours every semester in community service, utilizing the knowledge that they have, sharing it, teaching others, helping others. Very important. Learning, teaching in the schools, of course, not to be stuck with just what is available in the books and in the four walls of the school, but utilizing all the available elements in the society to teach them, you know. When I was supervising one of the schools, the school I set up in India called Fajr International School, which is K-12, K-12 school, we were interviewing sports teachers for sports. I stressed that the sports teacher should be Islamically conscious. Not only that, but the sports teacher was required to prepare a lesson plan in which the same principles that we talked about were there. So sports became not only a means of recreation for the students, but it also was a teaching means. And why not? Because really, in sports, you see the worst character of the students. You know, students may be very calm, very fine in school, but you get them on the playing field and you see the worst that comes out. So this is where the sports teacher becomes critical, that he or she now is correcting the moral issues of the kids on this playing field. Because if they can be corrected there, that's a huge change. If they can understand how to look at this game, it's just a game. You know? So what if your goalie let the goal in? You know, not you screaming, because you know they get very rough with each other, right? You know, no, teach them it's just a game. Let's enjoy the game. You know, it's not about you got to win and you can't lose and you know all these other kinds of things. Sharing, there's so much can be done with sports in terms of modifying behavior, children's behavior. It's incredible. But this is not an area that it's normally taught. It's neglected. We need to, for a proper school, that needs to be a priority. That we don't exclude any area. Even the cleaners. When I set up that school in Chennai, I talked to them about those who are working in the school. That the cleaners who clean the floors and things like this, the children must respect them. Because again, in schools, they will look at these people, you know, they're low class, whatever, you know, and they may talk to them badly and these kind of things. No. They're elders. The kids should all know to respect the cleaners. And the cleaners are told, if you see a kid doing something wrong, correct them. This way, that way, don't hit them with the mop, right? Right? But you correct them, you use other means, inform their teacher, whatever, so on, so on, so. You are a part of the school. So everyone has a role to play. And all should be involved in modifying, guiding the behavior of the children in the school. So, inshallah, we hope that we, all of us here, you know, and others would cooperate, because this project requires cooperation. It requires cooperation on the level of the schools, individual schools, and it can be more effectively implemented where the schools themselves work together. So I don't know how many schools are here represented, but if those who are representatives of the school or can speak on behalf of the school would be willing to start this pilot project for the beginning of this year, September, when your schools start, you know, inshallah, this would be a good first step, right?